So hello, well today I'd like to take a look at another, what have I got in the back here, squeaky thing, another look at an owner's manual. This one's quite an old one. It's actually the first car that I remember that my family owned. It wasn't the first car my mother and father owned, obviously, because they were married obviously before I was born in 1954. And I was born in 1965 in November. So basically, this car played an important... What are you doing? Why are you looking so sad, though? Jimmy. Don't look sad, mate. He's probably thinking, I'm going to go to sleep. The old puncher's making another video. Oh, God. Yeah, days are gripping, aren't they? Well, I hope somebody finds them of interest anyway. But this is an old Wolseley 1500. Yeah, document from 1965 there. I don't know if you can see that. If I can get in that tight in focus. From the British Motor Corporation Limited, Longbridge, Birmingham. Ironically, my father was into management training, and he once went to Longbridge. And to train the managers, the junior managers, and see what was going on there. And they sort of said, "Oh no, hold on, Mr. Timber. We're going to have a lunch first, and we're going to have a couple of drinks." And by the time my dad got to his training session, they were all drunk. So it's no wonder really why the British motor industry just collapsed, because they were all just like not doing a lot. According to my dad, don't quote me on that. I quote him. He was there. But this is the car. There it is, and I remember it. Strange-looking vehicle by today's standards, of course. But obviously, you've got to remember these were projects that were devised in the 1950s. And in actual fact, the smells of this car were lovely. The leather seats, the wooden dashboard. I'm not so sure if you could smell the wooden dashboard, but you could certainly smell the seats. And let's just crack on. General data. So there you go. There it is. Champion spark plugs, all the fuel systems and all the rest of it. My dad used to service this himself. He never really had that much money, my dad, and he always used to buy cars second hand, and he would have bought this one well into the 1960s. Wouldn't have been new, but it would have been in good order. And he used to, I remember he had a grease gun that he used to do all the the grease points, nipples, they're called grease nipples. You had to kind of load them with grease. Things like suspension in the old days and what have you. So there's all your bits and bobs. Foot brake. Interestingly about this one, that the headlamp dip switch number 7 is actually on the floor. So to operate the high beam, low beam, you were using your foot. Whereas nowadays you'd obviously be on it would be on a stalk, wouldn't it? Now this is interesting as well, because you see this rippling on this dashboard. That represents the walnut veneer that was of the day. Awesome. Wood dashboard. And I remember when my mum was driving, I used to sit at the back, no seatbelts of course, used to stand on the back, stand at the back really. I was in the back, but I was sort of standing up, watching what my mum was doing. And I remember saying to her, "Why do you keep switching the lights up and down, Mum?" And she was so too tired to answer, type of thing, but obviously she was responding to oncoming traffic and what have you. But that was done with a foot, I remember. Funny how you remember stuff when you're going into senility. But there you go. Heating and ventilation. I mean, I could kind of scan this whole thing, but I imagine that a lot of people would be just passing out with boredom. But there you go. Look at the basicness of it all. But this is interesting. This was chrome, of course. These were all chrome handles. They stuck out on the door, and there was like a chrome flap to prevent water from getting into the key slot. later, many years later, working in the NHS, I discovered that these handles were removed because they were and made flatter because children often would be in accidents and they would, in a glancing blow with a car, this could be the situation whether or not they were sort of dead or alive if that hit their head, that jutting thing sticking out, and wing mirrors as well. Crazy stuff, but it's true, and so that's why modern cars don't have handles that stick out. At least if they're not made of chrome anyway, they might be made of plastic that can implode on impact, sort of thing. But there will be some things on this car I have never seen before, like this. The wheel nut spanner clamp bolt to maintain correct air pressure in the tyre. That is weird. That is really weird. You can well, I'll leave you to read that if you want to. There you go, Mr. BMC. Well, they had a seatbelt, but not in the back. They had them in the front, obviously. So I tell a lie. But they didn't have them in the back. That's a fact, because I know, because I've never wore one. Cooling system. And running instructions. Look at that. It's amazing. So I'll whiz on a bit, obviously, otherwise this thing's going to get electrical equipment. I imagine quite basic electrical equipment. Look at that for a fuse box. That is well, basic. I wonder if they had fuse wires. Interesting. Ah, look at that. The old setting of the headlight beams. You see, you would never have that in a manual nowadays. That would belong to a garage, wouldn't it? And you'd have to pay for that. But in these days, look, they're telling you how to set your own headlamp height adjustments to go from Europe, or even just set them up. Light bulb changes. Yeah. Oh, look at that. The old drum brakes. The old brake adjustment on drum brakes. Amazing. Huh. Oh, here you go, look. Lubrication chart. There's sort of wheels and tyres, but this would have been my dad's domain. This, by the way, isn't his manual. I bought this. I know we had the car, but I had to buy this separately many years later. In fact, I think I bought it about 20 years ago. But there's the lubrication chart, so you see all the checks you've got to do. Because nowadays cars are just made. You just get in them and drive them, don't you? And you, every 10,000 kilometres, you sort of throw them into a mechanic if you're wise and say, please service the car. But in these days, my old dad did all of it. All of it. It was underneath the car. And I remember when I lived in Hampshire, in Easton, it was quite a posh village, and I know I speak posh, but I'm not posh. I'm just a sort of from working class stock, really, and ultimately I was always working on my own car. And I remember going down the pub and meeting somebody, and they said, "Oh, who are you?" And I said, "Oh, I live at St Christopher's Church Lane, Easton." And they said, "Oh, who? No, I don't know you." And they said, "Oh, hang on a minute. Yes, I remember you now. You're the one that's always underneath his car." And I thought, yeah. How times have changed, though. Because whatever. But look at this. Periodic maintenance. Superb. Check tyre pressures weekly, you see. I would never check my tyre pressures weekly. Or the battery, to be honest. But in those days, you had to top them up yourselves. Now they're closed, aren't they? They're closed off. But in the old days, batteries used to have what's it called? Distilled water or something like that in there. And the grease nipple for the half shaft. Look at that, the universal joint. I had one of them on my Capri. I had many Capris, 7 of them in actual fact, and one of them snapped and it came up to the back seat. And it was just a good job that I wasn't carrying any back passengers, because they would have had quite a shock to the derriere, is all I can say. So those old rear-wheel drive half shafts, yeah. Oh, look at that, yeah. I remember that as well, doing that on the Capri. Forward Capri, of course. Handbrake. Balance lever. I remember some of these things. And the differential filler for the... Yeah, I remember these were in my year as well. These were in my era. Well, having said that, of course they were, because I'm only going forward about 10 years. Anyway, whatever. Yeah, it's all good. Oh, look at that. Who knows what they are? Plug gauges. Put it in the description box below if you know what they're for. And the plug gap adjuster. Yeah, I've used them, definitely. Most certainly have, sir. So there you go. I'll kind of wind it down now a bit. Because really, truly, it's probably... There's the wiring diagram. Look at that. 4 wires and a budgerigar. No, it wasn't that basic, but it was okay. They were of their day, weren't they? Let's face it. There you go. Printed in England by the Newfield Press Limited, Cowley, Oxford, which is where they made a lot of cars. I'll centralise that so it looks good. Thank you very much for watching. And all the very best. Cheers. Goodbye.